This is Lynn Packer with part 4 of my video op-ed on Operation Underground Railroad. This one's about Tim Ballard's answers to hardball questions. On October 2nd this year, Tim Ballard posted a YouTube video saying we need to talk. He was taking on 10 hardball questions. He said it was about transparency and truth. Ballard lobbed softball questions to himself about Operation Underground Railroad. Instead of knocking answers to his own questions out of the park, he struck out. Ballard continued making undocumented claims, lying, and promoting his child sex trafficking conspiracy theory. OUR took a chance serving up falsehoods and propaganda. By doubling down after suspected crimes occur, especially after a criminal investigation has begun, OUR runs the risk of compounding any civil, perhaps any criminal legal jeopardy. Utah law says each separate communication made for the purpose of executing or concealing a scheme or artifice to defraud is a separate act, an offense of communication fraud. Keyword here, concealing. Federal law. It can be illegal to conceal any fraudulent scheme in order to prevent victims from becoming aware they've been harmed, or to lull victims into a sense of security, to hold off making inquiries or lodging complaints. Again, keyword, conceal. But before I fact-check Ballard's 10 controversial questions, these news updates. Since my last report, a Utah mainstream news outlet, Fox 13, on October 7th, finally reported on Ballard and OUR being suspected of criminal activity. In a previous report, I talked about OUR potentially becoming the most prominent fraud in Utah history. Since then, another Utah venture, Nikola Motor Company, founded by billionaire Trevor Milton, has been accused of fraud. It could become Utah's highest dollar fraud ever. Perhaps not surprising, both scandals, Operation Underground Railroad and Nikola Motor, not only involve alleged false claims, but also involve child sex trafficking allegations and indirectly involve some of the same people. Utah billionaire Trevor Milton founded Nikola Motor, which claims to be bringing a Tesla competitor, hydrogen electric-powered heavy-duty truck to market. Milton paid a Utah real estate record $32.5 million for a mansion on the Weber River outside Park City. In September, he resigned as CEO amid allegations of financial fraud and sexual assault, including alleged assault on 2 teenagers. Under Tim Ballard's and OUR's definition, Milton would be a child sex slave trafficker if the allegations were true. Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes has not investigated Milton, who donated to the Reyes campaign, for either alleged fraud or alleged child sex trafficking. Instead, Reyes's office prosecuted a former Milton friend for extortion. The AG alleged that Jonathan Robb threatened to publicize Milton's alleged financial and assault crimes if not paid $500,000. Here are some facts about extortion suspect Johnny Robb. He was raised Mormon and passionate about religion. He suffered with manic depression, bipolar disorder. Late last year, he began calling himself Elijah and getting tattoos. He was arrested in April during an AG sting operation for attempted extortion of Trevor Milton. He claimed he was set up and was offered hush money to keep quiet. He was jailed for almost 3 weeks while trying to make bail. He committed suicide 2 days after he was released. The Attorney General's main proof against Robb was Instagram postings and text messages provided by Milton. Milton told investigators the fraud and sex accusations Robb was threatening to post were not true. He was worried that even allegations could damage his reputation. According to Robb's family, the AG did not investigate whether Milton was lying when he denied sexual misconduct. The AG did not subpoena and forensically examine Milton's and Robb's cell phones. Is it possible one or the other altered evidence? The AG did not investigate whether Rob's story that he was offered hush money to keep quiet could be true. Reyes's office did not initiate the case against Rob. Park City Police did. The AG took the case from local prosecutors. Why? Reyes's investigator did little, if any, added investigation. Why was that? After Reyes charged Rob with extortion, Milton donated $15,000 to the Reyes re-election campaign. Fox 13's investigative reporter requested the AG's Rob case file. The day before the AG complied and provided the records, Reyes returned Trevor Milton's $15,000 campaign donation. The Attorney General's office should be investigated for how and why it brought criminal charges on behalf of a Reyes donor. There are some connections among Trevor Milton, Tim Ballard, and Sean Reyes. Reyes and Milton shared several close friends. Realtor Jimmy Rex is a common denominator. He has a podcast and has interviewed Sean Reyes, Tim Ballard, Trevor Milton, and another associate, Paul Hutchinson, who I've talked about before. Here you see Rex and Hutchinson with some prepper gear. Now to the main point of this video, fact-checking Ballard's 10 hardball controversial questions.
We're going to answer the controversial questions right now. Oh, there's some big ones.
The first question Ballard asks himself: people question whether OUR should be working overseas. He answers in part, some prosecution of bad guys fell out of the jurisdiction of the United States. We are working to target American pedophiles who go overseas as sex tourists, so we have a better chance of catching them. He said that in turn leads to rescuing children at home.
Some people have the opinion that OUR shouldn't be working overseas. As a special agent working in the government, I was exposed to many leads overseas that weren't being worked, that couldn't be worked because they fell outside the jurisdiction of the United States. That's why I actually quit my job to start Operation Underground Railroad to help law enforcement overseas to rescue children. Our U.S. donors and supporters should know that when we go overseas, we are in fact working with law enforcement to target American pedophiles. When they go overseas as sex tourists, their inhibitions are down. So we have a better chance, frankly, of catching them with our international foreign law enforcement partners. And that, in turn, leads to rescuing children and protecting children at home.
Here are the facts. The United States has worldwide jurisdiction to combat child prostitution through the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and United Nations. Ballard's claim OUR directly targets American sex tourist pedophiles who go overseas to sexually abuse children is false. The opposite is true. The FBI method does, and OUR's concept does not. OUR operatives pretend to be sex tourists. They do not arrest themselves. Ballard says it leads in turn to rescuing children at home. How? The likely main reason Ballard had to quit to form his own strike force is that he wanted to produce television series and movies. There's no way he could do that while working for the government. For that answer, Ballard gets a bunch of Pinocchios. The second question, someone wanted to know if OUR merely funnels kids to other organizations who actually do most of the work. This question touches on the extent to which OUR provides aftercare for the purported sex slaves it rescues. Or stated crassly, does OUR rescue and then dump the damaged goods on someone else?
So what is your response when people say OUR is only a funnel to other organizations that are actually doing the work? The full-time people at OUR are former law enforcement who have worked these types of cases for decades. The goal is to rescue kids. And so we're going to work in a way that does that effectively and as quickly and as safely as possible. That means we partner with people.
OUR keeps far too much information to itself to determine whether Ballard's answer is accurate. Generally, it is common for child rescue charities to work together to improve the lives of children worldwide, but Ballard's answer is incomplete and undocumented. Sources indicate that OUR takes credit for work done by other groups and misrepresents some of its accomplishments. But so far, critics have not documented that either. So, no Pinocchios. Question 3. How is it possible that OUR claims to support over 6,000 survivors when it rescues 4,000 plus? How is that possible? Ballard explains how he does the math, how 4,000 can equal 6,000.
OUR claims to support over 6,000 survivors. How is that possible? We have rescued 4,000 plus, but we say that we take care of, in survivor care, over 6,000. Well, it's a very easy explanation. When we go out and we do a rescue in a country, and let's say we rescue 20 kids, and those 20 kids go to an aftercare home that we're sponsoring for those kids, and there's already 100 kids there, we work to take care of everybody at the aftercare homes that we support.
Again, for answer 3, Ballard fails to document his claims. He needs to list the names of all rescued kids, disclose where they were taken, make known how many were there already, and divulge what OUR contributes in cash and labor. There are rumors Ballard fudges the numbers and counts adult prostitutes with child prostitutes when he raids brothels. But rumors are not proof. So again, no Pinocchios. Next question. Some people think it's an issue that you have family who are working or have worked for OUR.
Some people think it's an issue that you have family who have worked or are working for OUR. Okay, wait a minute. I don't have a lot of family, though. That's the problem, that you have family. Because, I mean, seriously, it's like 3 people. It's an interesting question because as a percentage of the entire employee base, it's very, very tiny. When I started OUR, I went to people who were willing to work for me when I had nothing to really provide them. And they came on board. They sacrificed, they helped build what OUR is today, and I have no reason to then let them go.
Ballard misconstrues the point. It's not about the percentage of family and friends making up his workforce. It's about their roles as managers and directors that eliminates independent oversight. Once again, I'll show you the employees who have close personal ties. The CEO was a college roommate. At least he was CEO a year ago. Ballard now claims the title again. The CFO is a sister. Person over public relations, another sister. A brother-in-law was a director. A sister, another director, and yet another was a neighbor. I also mentioned before that OUR's president also serves as a board member and as its accountant. It's a double conflict of interest, but not illegal. It's not fraudulent, but conflicts increase chances fraud could occur. Question 5. Some people express concern that OUR's name is inspired by something that happened in Black history. Ballard explains that it's a name he chose, that he read books about slavery and the Civil War, and that he is honoring historical figures who became my heroes.
Some people have expressed concern that OUR's name is inspired from something that happened in Black history. What are your thoughts about that? The Underground Railroad was a name that I chose, Operation Underground Railroad, and it wasn't a casual decision. I recognized that what we were fighting was, in fact, a modern-day version of slavery. So I started reading every book I could on slavery, the Underground Railroad, the Civil War. And I learned so many lessons from people who became my heroes. And so when we created Operation Underground Railroad, and I had to come up with a name, I wanted to honor those people. Not just honor them, but keep them front and center in our program so that we could continue to not only be inspired by them, but literally learn from them, even tactics on how to eradicate slavery.
To begin with, Operation Underground Railroad was not his first choice for a name. The name he wanted had been taken by another similar charity. Ballard had already written a book about the Civil War and slavery, The Lincoln Hypothesis. The book asks, was the Book of Mormon a key factor in Lincoln's success in the healing of a nation? The book is revisionist history, an attempt to make history conform to his religious beliefs. Ballard explains that just as Lincoln was deciding whether to free the slaves, he checked out a book.
Abraham Lincoln, right during this time, this process of crystallization, he checked out a book from the Library of Congress. This book is significant for several reasons. One is that he was only supposed to have it for 2 weeks, and he kept it for 8 months. He turned it in just days after he issued his preliminary Emancipation Proclamation to his cabinet, as if to say, perhaps, okay, I've learned something from this, okay? Now, the book he had, as controversial as this might be for people, was the Book of Mormon. Now, fact or fiction, the Book of Mormon tells a story of a promised land, and it tells the answer to a calamity like a civil war, and that is the nation turns to God.
Ballard's thesis is the American Civil War was God's curse on an unrighteous nation, but not just for allowing slavery, also for persecuting Catholics, Jews, some Protestant sects, and above all, Mormons, who Ballard says were being exterminated and exiled. Here he's seen making a presentation about his curse theory. He shows a painting of church founder Joseph Smith being assassinated, and also the Nauvoo Temple being gutted by fire, which is also a misrepresentation because the fire occurred after the church sold the temple. Here's what Ballard leaves out. The White House did check out a Book of Mormon, but along with many other books about Mormons, as Lincoln dealt with the so-called Mormon problem. The main Mormon problem was polygamy. When Lincoln formed the Republican Party, it strongly opposed two evils, slavery and polygamy. At the party's first national convention in 1856, Republicans adopted a plank in their platform that it was the duty of Congress to prohibit in the territories those twin relics of barbarism, polygamy and slavery. Here are a couple of quotes from the book Civil Rights Saints, written about the same time as Ballard's. Northern politicians, including Lincoln, portrayed polygamy as another Southern slave power waiting to rebel. In these politicians' view, polygamists were holding their wives hostage as slaves. In the mid-19th century, opposition to polygamy was always linked to slavery. Lincoln Republicans portrayed Mormon plural wives as innocent victims held in subjugation akin to enslaved blacks in the South. They wanted to purge the nation of licentious power, including such tyrants as slave masters and polygamous husbands. Ballard turns the truth on its head. He would have his adherents believe that Lincoln, who saw polygamy as another form of slavery, would read a book that says dark skin is a curse of God, and yet it would inspire him to free the slaves. More Pinocchios. Like Ballard, I wrote a book involving black history. Playing Black is about how blacks and the civil rights movement influenced the sport of basketball, and I hope help makes the point, Black Lives Matter. There's another important abolitionist figure that Ballard usually talks about, Harriet Beecher Stowe, and he usually discusses her in terms of marketing the abolition movement. Here's a statue of Stowe meeting Abraham Lincoln. He's attributed as saying, "You're the lady who wrote the book that started this war." He probably didn't say it, but it's probably true anyway. Here you see Ballard making a presentation earlier this year at Brigham Young University talking about Harriet Beecher Stowe.
One of my favorite marketers of the cause was a woman named Harriet Beecher Stowe. Who's heard of Harriet Beecher Stowe? Okay, most of you. Harriet Beecher Stowe is my hero because she wouldn't turn a blind eye. She came back, but then she had the same question a lot of you are having. What can I do? I'm not a politician. And she was so distraught about the question, she asked her sister what she should do. Her sister writes her back a letter. And she tells the story as she read the response from her sister, and she reads this, and her sister says, "You like to write. Why don't you write something?" And she just, the Spirit fills her. She stands up. She says she crunches the paper, the letter in her hand, because she's so impassioned. And she says out loud, "I will write something. I will if I live." And she wrote a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Of course, Uncle Tom's Cabin was a major emancipation factor. But what Ballard does not tell his audience is, Harriet Beecher Stowe also spoke about the abominations of polygamy. She insisted polygamy must be ended to free women from slavery. She wrote the preface to the anti-polygamy book, Tell It All, by anti-polygamous crusader Fanny Stenhouse. She wrote, "Shall we not then hope that the hour has come to loose the bonds of a cruel slavery whose chains have cut into the very hearts of thousands of our sisters, a slavery which debases and degrades womanhood, motherhood, and the family?" Polygamy still exists today. Modern-day polygamous slavery is practiced by Mormon church offshoot groups. It includes marriage of underage children who are child sex slaves according to Ballard's definition. It's what the 2007 child rape trial of polygamous leader Warren Jeffs was about: sexual assault on a child. Here's the victim, Alyssa Wall, on her wedding day, and on the stand when she testified. "I know quite a bit about the case because I was a consultant for the Jeffs defense team. And coincidentally, I knew Alyssa Wall's father before he became a polygamist." Why isn't Ballard's jump team rescuing modern-day polygamy sex slaves? They're all over Utah, Idaho, Canada, Mexico, a lot of other places. Jeffs continued to lead the church from behind bars, and the practice of older men marrying underage women did not end with his arrest. The sixth question. I've heard you get paid in excess of $300,000 a year at OUR. Ballard said this question upset him. He said he's been an unpaid volunteer at OUR since April 2019. Yes, in 2018 he made over $300,000, but he and his family were getting death threats. OUR paid for expensive security measures for his house, but counted that expense as income.
Oh, I love this one. Okay. This one makes me upset. So I might get a little bit, I might cuss. How many cuss words do I get, Hillary? Two? Okay. Which ones? Okay, so I've heard you get paid, me personally, that I get paid in excess of $300,000 a year at OUR. So I'm so happy to stand here and tell you that I'm a volunteer at OUR, and I have been since April of 2019. 2018, OUR had been involved in several major rescue operations, and me and my family were getting crazy death threats. It was a very dangerous time. I went to the board. I said, "What do you want to do?" They said, "We've got to make sure your family is safe." So they took precautions. We put in a security system, got a mean-looking dog, put a very expensive, secure fence around my entire house. In the end, the attorneys came in and said, "Well, to do this the safest way, to be the most compliant with IRS laws and everything else, we're going to have to W-2 you, Tim," meaning it's going to have to show all these added costs are going to have to show as salary to you. And that's where you got that number from 2018. And those sources, by the way, that report that, they also see in the 990 the very next year, 2019, which reports a salary of $106,000 to me.
Let's first take a look at that 2019 Form 990 tax return. Yep, it does show about $106,000, but that's just for part of the year. He quit in April, so the annual rate could be as high as $425,000 a year, depending on exactly when he quit. It's really misleading. For that, he gets Pinocchios. Going back a year to the 2018 tax return, does show Tim Ballard made $343,022 that year. Remember, he said it includes security measures, part of which is for an expensive secure fence around his entire house.
Put in a security system, got a mean-looking dog, put a very expensive, secure fence around my entire house.
What is the truth? There is no secure fence, not even a decorative fence surrounding Ballard's entire house. There is a tall steel decorative fence along the front property line. There is no fence along the side or backyards, not even a decorative fence, no barrier at all to driving or walking up to the house. A gate along the front fence appears to have been left open for months, if not years. This photo shows the fence along the front property line, and as I said, there's no fence along the sides. Someone could just step over the split rail fence and walk straight to the house. At the other end, there's no barrier to walking to the house. And as I said, there's a gate that's been left open. Somebody could walk or drive to the house. Here's what real security measures look like: spikes or barbed wire on top of steel fences, bars over all windows, and bollards protecting drive-in gates in case somebody tries to ram through with a vehicle. Ballard's explanation for his high salary gets lots of Pinocchios. Question 7. Why do you take celebrities on operations? Why endanger them? Ballard claims to have learned that method from history when the United Kingdom banned slavery before the United States did. He says British politician William Wilberforce would get celebrities and wealthy influencers on his boat and sail his boat to bump into docked slave ships. Ballard's celebrities become a voice for child sex slaves.
Why do you take celebrities on operations? Now, this is controversial to some people, of course. Why would you bring people and endanger them? My answer to that question is our goal is to rescue children. That's our goal. I love history. I learned from history. And there was a guy named William Wilberforce back in the 19th century who was instrumental in eradicating the slave trade in the United Kingdom. And what he did to do that was he would actually get celebrities and influencers and people with a high net wealth. He would invite them on his boat, and he would intentionally sail his boat and bump into a slave ship that was docked. And he'd say, look at it. This is what we are allowing. If we can show someone what's happening and they see it for themselves and they have a voice that's powerful, they will go back and now stand in place and be a voice for the many other children who have not been liberated yet.
William Wilberforce was, in fact, a British politician and abolitionist. He used his position in Parliament as a lighthouse to shine light into the darkness of the slave trade. But I found no record where Wilberforce put rich celebrities on a boat to show them the brutal mistreatment of slaves being packed onto ships. I did find where another abolitionist, William Dolben, led a group of his fellow members of Parliament to the Thames River to board a ship being fitted for a slaving voyage. His visit to the slave ship appears to have hardened his opposition to the slave trade. There's no mention of celebrities in Dolben's group. And by the way, there was no forming of an armed militia, OUR style, to storm slave ships and free slaves. Maybe Ballard has proof to support his British celebrity ship claim. If not, it's a lie. He does, though, have a knack to get celebrities like football coach Mike Tomlin and Super Bowl champion Steve Young to promote OUR.
Slavery worldwide is unbelievable. If we can't all come together on something like that, we tripping, aren't we? It ain't nothing divisive about rescuing young people.
Hey, Tim Ballard's a good friend of mine. He was the special agent for the government that worked the crimes against children. And he said, to your point, we've got to do this better and faster because these kids are, you like sex trafficking and slavery is the emotional and the toll, and it's like we need to go in there and make this better. And what they're trying to do is change things on the ground in the Dominican Republic and Haiti so the local people can start to be the ones that are self-policing and change the culture, because what happens is they go in, they rescue these kids, and they pop up somewhere else, and so they're really trying to change the culture. But
the 8th question, are you a religious-based organization? Ballard says no, that some employees are atheists. But he does say we have a prayer roll where we send out prayer requests.
Are you a religious-based organization? We are not affiliated with any denomination. However, that does not mean that we aren't religious people. It's not a requirement. In fact, there are people that work for us, I know, that claim to be atheists. If I'm on an operation, you don't have to join me, but usually everybody does. I'm going to pray. And we also rely on other people who want to join us in prayer. We have a prayer roll where we send out prayer requests to supporters and donors who want to get involved in that way.
OUR does make requests for prayers. Was probably inspired by prayer rolls in Mormon temples where members are invited to place the names of those in need on the prayer roll in the temple for special prayers. Despite Ballard's prayer roll being very Mormon-like, OUR is not directly affiliated with the Mormon Church or any other, so no Pinocchios. The next to the last question. Some people think you're facilitating conspiracy theories. What's your response? Ballard says OUR has a supporter base of hundreds of thousands of people and cannot control what supporters post and tag OUR. He said, look at what we are saying. Now that we've got your attention, stick around and find out what is true. He said we're very transparent. Note his use of the words true and very transparent.
Some people think you are facilitating conspiracy theories. What is your response? So there are always conspiracy theories on every topic, on everything. We have a supporter base of hundreds of thousands of people. So we can't control what people say or do and post and maybe tag us in that. So don't be confused by that. Look at what we are saying. We do our best to vet out those theories. And if appropriate, we'll take a stand and say, hey, this isn't true and that's not true. But since we got your attention, why don't you stick around and find out what actually is true?
OUR's marketing concept is based on false statements, withheld relevant information, conspiracy theories, and fearmongering. There's virtually no transparency despite claims to the contrary. OUR's main and false marketing message is that there is a huge and growing number of pedophiles and kidnappers worldwide who are abducting children into sex slavery. Clearly, Ballard is responding about his followers who cite QAnon conspiracy theories, among others. As the New Republic reported, earlier this summer, when QAnon followers pushed a conspiracy theory about online furniture retailer Wayfair trafficking children in boxes, Ballard took to Twitter. With or without Wayfair, child trafficking is real and happening, he posted. The police would get to the bottom of it, he said, but rather than emphasizing that no child sex trafficking case had ever been traced back to Wayfair, he gave the conspiracy theory credence. No question about it, said Ballard. Children are being sold that way, and I'm glad people are waking up to it. These are the facts. Children being kidnapped off the street from stable families into sex slavery and forced into sex trafficking rings is extremely rare, especially in highly developed countries like the United States. Far and away, most pedophiles are known to the child, even to his or her parents. As fearful as the prospect is that a child could be abducted by a stranger, the more fearful truth to handle is that most pedophiles are in plain sight.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
The truth that most child sex abusers are known to the family seems to be one Ballard cannot handle or emphasize because it runs counter to his main fear-mongering fundraising message. Parents should be fearful, not of a child being abducted and molested by a stranger, but by being groomed and molested by someone they or their child knows and trusts. OUR's raids on brothels may save a few child prostitutes, but looking at the big picture, the raids are more likely counterproductive and waste millions of donor dollars for the sake of OUR's primary movie-making mission. Number 10, final question. How or where should you report possible trafficking or child exploitation cases? Ballard's response, don't call us.
How or where should you report possible trafficking or child exploitation cases? you should always call law enforcement first, because that's who we call. We are not law enforcement. And so if we get a lead, that's who we call. If you get a lead, that's who you should call. Law enforcement and aftercare providers are the ones doing the heavy lifting. We're trying to make that lift a little lighter.
Ballard is correct. You could call a national human trafficking hotline if you suspect child abuse. But for Utahns, the better number to call may be Utah's child abuse hotline, or contact your local law enforcement agency. Summarizing, Ballard's answers to 10 controversial questions plunges OUR into a deeper credibility hole.